Ford is on the verge of surpassing Jeep in vehicle sales with the Bronco compared to Jeep's Wrangler. We'll go over these sales figures. I'll explain why this is happening by showing you some key features on the Bronco that make it a better vehicle compared to the Wrangler for many buyers. And then I'll include a link to the Murdoch in Santa Quinn's website in the description down below. They're providing us with this Bronco. Let's get right into it. In the first quarter of 2025, Ford sold over 32,000 Broncos, whereas Jeep sold over 37,000 Wranglers. To put these numbers into perspective, before the Bronco was released, the Wrangler was selling about 250,000 units per year. After the release of the Bronco, the Wrangler dropped down to about 150,000 units, and the Bronco was sitting at about 100,000 units. So that means in the short time period since the new Bronco was released, Ford has taken over 100,000 customers per year from Jeep, and that's only increasing as time goes on. So let's go over some key features on the Bronco that make this a better vehicle for most people compared to the Wrangler. The first big thing that's pulling people over to Ford is the powertrains. Basically, Ford is offering more horsepower, more torque than what you can get with a Jeep at a lower price point with those powertrains. I mean, this Bronco, for example, has a turbo 2.7 liter V6 that has over 300 horsepower and over 400 pound-feet of torque, and it's similarly priced to a Wrangler with a dinky 3.6 liter V6 naturally aspirated that has less than 300 horsepower. Now, before we get into the next feature, I would really appreciate it if you would subscribe. It helps me get access to more cars to review for you guys. Now, the next big thing with the Bronco is tires. Ford offers 35-inch tall tires on tons of packages with the Bronco. This particular one is a Badland, so it's pretty loaded up, but you can also get a base model Bronco with 35-inch tall tire package. Jeep upsells you to a higher-end package to get 35s. Now, the next thing is independent front suspension with the Bronco. The Wrangler's solid front axle is definitely going to be better for off-road use, but most people just mall crawl with these boxy convertible SUVs, and so the Bronco having independent front suspension means it has better on-road driving manners. But what I think is much more damning for Jeep is the fact that they don't offer premium shocks like what Ford does. This Bronco has Fox shocks from the factory. And this isn't some crazy $100,000 special edition Bronco. No, those shocks are a $2,300 option that you can add to certain packages on the Bronco. So the days of Jeep expecting their customers to go and get more premium shocks by themselves after the fact are over. Ford is offering premium shocks on the Wrangler competitor from the factory at a very competitive price. Now, the next big thing is the interior space with the Bronco. You'll note that Ford made the body of the Bronco wider compared to the Wrangler, but then the fender flares are smaller. So this means that we have a larger cargo area in the back of the Bronco, more space for the rear passengers when it comes to width, and same thing for the driver and front passenger. This does mean that the Bronco drives a bit bigger on trails, but it's not something that people can't manage. They've proven that they can take this down trails that Wranglers do. And this will lead us to the next big item, and that is differential locks with the Bronco. The base model Bronco with the Sasquatch package has diff locks for the front and for the rear. Jeep, however, makes you go all the way up to the Rubicon package, which is pretty expensive to get a front diff lock. Now, I'm personally not a big tech guy, but Ford does have better tech than Jeep. Look at this digital gauge cluster. And the infotainment system in the Bronco is just better integrated, and overall, I'd say that it's a little bit easier to use in a lot of ways. And speaking of easier to use, the driveline select in the Bronco is a lot easier for normies to use than what you have in the Wrangler. Although I do appreciate the tactile feel with the Wrangler's four-wheel drive select. Having that shifter down there, I would definitely prefer that to buttons. But again, I understand that normies, they like buttons. The next item is insulation. The Bronco just has better top insulation, and it seems like all around it's just quieter in general compared to the Wrangler. Finally, pricing. This is a 2025 Badlands with the Turbo V6, with the Sasquatch package, the Fox shocks, and it stickers for $72,855. Now, you can get a nice Rubicon at the price point of this Bronco, but think about all the things that I just mentioned. The extra space, the better tech, the easier to use functions within the interior, the more powerful engine, the better shock system. I mean, there's so much going for this Bronco, and Ford's not charging more money than what Jeep is charging on the Wrangler. So let's take this Bronco out for a quick spin and sum things up. This Bronco for a quick spin, and I'm going to offer Jeep some advice in this video that I think is extremely practical for them to integrate with their vehicles, because there is something that already exists that could make the Wrangler, well, there's a couple things that exist that could make the Wrangler substantially better. So, and one of those things literally would not cost Jeep any like it's already been developed. that's the funny part. It's already been developed. So Jeep doesn't even have to go and do their own research and development on this item. So the size of the Bronco, this is something that's kind of, I've noticed, been controversial, because some people love the extra size that the Bronco has because it means that there's more interior space, which is nice, right? But then when you're on trails, the Bronco does feel, what are you doing, Hyundai? The Bronco does feel bigger. But I owned a Bronco Raptor, I owned a Wrangler 392, and I can tell you, yeah, the Bronco Raptor is definitely bigger down the trails, but like, even with the Bronco Raptor, which is wider than this, you can manage. You can definitely manage. Just get some PPF. That'll solve most of your issues. So, the engine performance. This is the, like, out of all the things I mentioned in this video, I think this is the thing that's hurting Jeep the most when it comes to vehicle sales. And that's because people just want a more premium engine. Like, you look at a Wrangler, it's over 70 grand, and you got sub 200 or sorry, not sub 200, sub 300 horsepower. It's like, why? Ford doesn't even have a version of the Bronco that has sub 300. Like, the base model engine still produces 300 horsepower. they're like right there. So, yeah, Jeep could definitely offer, and this is something that would take some research development and all that, but really just throw, okay, like Trump pulled back the emissions, throw a 5.7 Hemi in the Wrangler and the Gladiator, and don't charge, like, Jeep, please stop being greedy. Don't charge too much money for it. Just do that and make it be like a $2,000 upgrade. That's it. Maybe $3,000 if you feel like you really need the extra money. So engine is a big thing. The other thing that I think is really holding back the Wrangler is the shock setup. So a lot of people complain about the solid front axle with the Wrangler, but there is a very easy setup without getting rid of the solid front axle, and that is something that has already been developed by AEV. You guys know I've been testing out AEV vehicles for a really long time, and yesterday I actually just drove an AEV equipped Wrangler. And AEV has a setup where they change the springs, the shocks, and they also add a steering stabilizer to the Wrangler. When you have that whole setup, it's Bilstein shocks. I can't remember I think AEV makes the springs themselves. I can't remember exactly though. But anyways, with that whole setup, the Wrangler handles amazingly well. Like, you lose the obnoxious body roll. And again, even though it has a solid front axle, the steering actually feels pretty tight. And so Jeep needs to just go and pay AEV a bunch of money to put that setup on every single Rubicon. If they did that, or if they did what Ford does here, where it's like, okay, you pay an extra, you know, $2,000, $3,000, and you get this set up on the Rubicon, that would fix the handling complaints that people have with the Wrangler. Like, 100%, easy, done deal. It's beyond me why Jeep hasn't done this. I don't understand why Jeep is so firm on letting the customers go and get aftermarket shocks themselves. Like, I understand there's a lot of support for it, but it's like, again, if your competition is offering that at the same price point, like, you gotta make changes to be competitive. So those, like, out of everything I mentioned, those are the two biggest things that I think that Jeep, if they change that, then this whole thing where Ford is continually taking more market share from Jeep would stop. And I think it would actually reverse, especially if they did a V8, because Ford still won't put a V8 in this Bronco. If Ford, you know, decides to go to, you know, Cuckoo Town and put a V8 in the Bronco, the Jeep is done for. Like, 100%. Like, some people will still buy Wranglers because, like, Jeep people are, you know, I owned a Jeep, right? They're cultists a little bit. I met some of the people, and yeah, you got cultists. But yeah, I mean, if you just look at your average Joe, and if you look at Ford's engine lineup, and if they had the 5.0 V8 in the Bronco, game over. Like, I think Jeep needs to understand that, like, they are holding on by a thread right now when it comes to this market of convertible off-road SUVs. And so, yeah, that's my 2 cents. I think that, you know, I'm a huge Wrangler fan. I owned a 392 for 2.5 years. Absolutely love the vehicles, but Ford has completely shaken the market, and I guess I'm gonna have to go up here a little bit higher. Ford has completely shaken up the market, and until Jeep makes, again, I think those are kind of major changes, but until Jeep makes those changes, Ford is going to keep selling more Broncos. And we don't have the Q2 results in yet, but I bet that Ford outsold Jeep, just based on what I've seen at Ford dealers and Jeep dealers in terms of the inventory coming in and inventory going out. I would be willing to bet that there was more Broncos sold in Q2 of 2025 than there were Wranglers sold. Let me know your thoughts.